Hello everyone, so good to see you. April 20th, 2025 was a very eventful day with a little bit of something for everyone to celebrate depending on what's most important to you. Some celebrated Easter egg hunting, others celebrated Lucina's birthday or Fire Emblem's 35th anniversary. If you're dedicated enough, maybe you celebrated all of the above at the exact same time. Coupled with the series anniversary, one day later we were blessed with the announcement and release of a new title coming to NSO, Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones. I figured now was an opportune moment to go back and see just how well this holds up in 2025. Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones is the 8th installment of the series and the 3rd title release on the Game Boy Advance. This game has seen only one other re-release since then and was perhaps in a place where most people watching this didn't have access to. If you were an early adopter to the Nintendo 3DS, you may have been included in the exclusive Ambassador program, which included 10 NES games and 10 GBA games. Of those 10, one of them was The Sacred Stones. Game Boy Advance titles were never released on the 3DS in any other capacity, so this was the only way that you could play it. The resolution and clarity of GBA games emulated on this handheld may not have been the best, but I know plenty of people who fully enjoyed this on their 3DS, myself included. Fast forward to 2025, and now everyone who has the expansion pack for Nintendo Switch Online can also play what became the second localized title for fans overseas. I realize there's a chance that you weren't swept up in the Fire Emblem craze when the series was really hitting its stride on either the 3DS or the Switch. If so, here's a quick rundown of the premise. On the continent of Magville, there exists 5 major kingdoms, each housing a divine artifact called a Sacred Stone. These stones are said to keep a cursed evil at bay, protecting the land. One day, Emperor Vigard of the largest nation in the land, Grado, suddenly invades their neighboring allies in the kingdom of Renee, throwing the balance of peace into chaos. The kingdom's princess, Erica, along with her retainer, Seth, flee the castle before it, along with her father, fall. Yeah, you know what? This hardly counts as a spoiler. The dad is alive for a whole 2 minutes on screen before biting it. I'm almost positive that's a speedrun record amongst all Fire Emblem fathers. Upon leaving the castle, you meet one of the main villains, Valter, who is kind of a freak. After a narrow escape, the two determine that there is little more they can do but seek aid from neighboring kingdoms. Erica is also in search of her twin brother, Ephraim, who went missing and has apparently been fighting his own battles against the Grado Empire amongst the turmoil. Unlike Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade, which starts off very cozy and eases you into the plot, Sacred Stones immediately puts you in the middle of the protagonist's worst possible scenario. With Renee being torn asunder, bandits and thievery have run rampant while the knights are in disarray. The country itself falls apart in front of your very eyes, making everything feel much more dire and urgent. Your goal is to assemble as many allies as you can, reunite with Ephraim, and discover the underlying mystery as to why the Emperor of Grado has suddenly turned on their longtime allies. Like other titles, Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones is a turn-based strategy RPG where you command units like knights, mages, and warriors. Units wield either weapons or magic, each with their own sort of strength and weaknesses in a rock-paper-scissors format. Swords have an advantage over axes, axes over lances, and lances over swords. Bows are not affected by this weapon triangle and can only be used at a distance. Most magic can be used either while adjacent to an enemy or one space away. Anima, or nature magic, is effective against light magic, light counters dark, and dark counters anima in what is called the Trinity of Magic. Memorizing these fundamentals is the first step to being a master tactician. Or rather, you don't really have to memorize it. There's always these little arrows that tell you whether your weapon has the advantage or not. The game is divided into chapters, with each map having their own goals. Most often you either have to seize a location or rid the map of all enemies. During many of these missions, you'll have the opportunity to recruit new allies by either talking to units, visiting towns, or converting an enemy to your side instead. Recruiting enemies is always the most stressful, especially when they have a weapon that has a higher chance of hitting you with a critical hit. For the most part, you'll have to pay attention to what's happening in the story to understand which character needs to speak to who to convert them. You often are given the freedom to approach a situation how you see fit, and sometimes it feels more like a puzzle than a battle, but in the best way. Will you optimize the various terrain for advantages, luring enemies in one by one, or charge right in? Will you pick enemies apart from a distance, set up a wall of defense in one location, or divide and conquer? For the most part, it's up to you. Fire Emblem has often been very flexible in allowing the player to formulate a strategy. And one of the most satisfying aspects of the series is seeing your units grow and go from middling backup to a formidable frontline force. Further evolving the series, this was the first title in which you could choose what your units will change their class into once they're a high enough level to promote. Each class offers 2 different possibilities. This here is where the now series staple of having more agency over your unit's classes and growth really began. Also new to the series with Sacred Stones are the trainee classes. There are 3 units under the trainee class who start off very weak at first. If you have the patience and tactical know-how to set up letting them get damage and kills on enemies to earn them their levels, you will start seeing some real results. At level 10, they will automatically class up at the beginning of the following chapter. From here, you can determine what path they will take as they change into a standard class like the rest of your units. Upon reaching their final class change, they can branch off even further and can honestly become some of the strongest units in the game. There's just something very amusing and gratifying about seeing these kids start off as tiny, weak units and then becoming absolute tanks by the late game. And as always, if any allies fall in battle, they are gone forever. While there is an easier mode, one which offers more tutorials for beginners, these were the days where permadeath was unavoidable. However, this is one of the easier Fire Emblem titles, partially because of this. In this game, you can freely roam the world map, which is what inspired how Fire Emblem Awakening would eventually implement it. Which means, yes, you can participate in extra skirmishes that aren't tied to the main story and train your units up. If you put in the time, you can level up your units to the point where it might trivialize some of the main chapters, but note that these skirmishes are optional. It does kind of make any arena that you find seem a little less effective, but you can still grind some experience and money from them. And speaking of grinding, if you're a fan of support conversations and you haven't played any of the GBA games, you might not be a fan of how they work in this game. You essentially need to end your turn while having 2 compatible support units next to each other. This earns you support points, which are invisible to us players. Once you earn enough of these support points, you can check this screen to see who can have a conversation. This does mean that you might be stuck in a loop of ending turns over and over again before a map ends, just to get a few conversations, and they can only happen during a battle. Luckily, support point requirements are much lower in this game compared to the Blazing Blade, so you won't be spending several dozens of turns to earn them. Plus, with extra skirmish maps, there is a lot more opportunities to pair units up. Much like today, supports offer bonuses to units within 3 spaces of each other, like increased attack strength or evasion, and can go up 3 ranks. Unfortunately, you can only have 5 support conversations per playthrough and per character. This means that you can only have 1 maxed out A rank support and 1 B rank per run. They thankfully removed this cap and pretty much figured out the system fully, starting with Fire Emblem Awakening. But yeah, considering this is one of the only ways to give these units more personality, limiting them is definitely a downside for those of us who just want to see their favorite character interact with more people. One of the major changes in this title is, partway through, you'll have a significant plot point that branches into 2 arcs. On one side, Erica must reach the allied nation of Roston, while passing through what we assume are to be allied nations. This is the easier of the 2 paths, and the game will clearly telegraph this to you. Ephraim, however, goes straight into the heart of Grado itself to confront its Emperor Vigard, and is the more challenging of the 2. In terms of plot and story revelations, as you might expect, Ephraim's side is the more interesting and impactful to witness firsthand. If you don't go this route, you're kind of just told about it in a conversation later from Erica's perspective, which is a bit anticlimactic. If you want, you can create an extra save file so you can experience both paths. That's if you don't mind reverting back to units that might have grown very strong in one branch over the other. There are thankfully no characters that get locked out of choosing one path over the other. You simply recruit them at different points of the story. Separating paths or unique protagonist perspectives is another staple of the Fire Emblem series now, with games like 3 Houses or Fates. The format of the world map and skirmishes is the most like Fire Emblem Engage as far as the most recent titles go. I kinda wish it was done in the same way that Almond Celigo stories were both followed in one playthrough during Shadows of Valentia. But, oh well, you gotta get the player to start a new file somehow. There are people who will claim that the game is a little too similar to the previous one, the Blazing Blade, which I can see. Sprites and animations are mostly the same, many of the map assets are exactly the same, even from the Binding Blade 2 games ago. If you're forming your opinion from just the first few short chapters, then yeah, the structure feels mostly the same. But the further you dig into game elements like the world map, extra battles, multiple class changes, and then to the shift in tone of story, a slightly more muted color palette, and a branching path, I think Sacred Stones holds its own identity very well. I remember, at first, I didn't really enjoy Sacred Stones for certain ways it was different to the Blazing Blade. There was no tactician, so I wasn't able to self-insert like before. Even though technically I was such a tiny part of the overall story, I enjoyed imagining I was there and having the character portraits look at me and talk to me. But in time, I realized the Sacred Stones benefits a lot more from focusing on telling its own story, rather than shoehorning a self-insert into it. Nowadays, I don't mind at all. The main protagonists are overall rather interesting. It's pretty funny, every time Seth tells Erica something is a bad idea and she shouldn't do it, she does it anyway and he's like, well, alright. Then you have Ephraim over here. In your first chapter with him, his plan is to take an entire castle with the tiniest strike team of 4 men, which is so stupid of an idea. And that's exactly why he does it. It is the best move to make because everyone is outside running around hunting him down. Who in the world would try and seize an entire castle like this? The enemies are like, what are these guys doing? Are they crazy? It's kind of comical. Sometimes Ephraim is just here to fight, but he's also a unique blend of methodical thinking while being very reckless in battle, and I'm all for it. There's also some rather disturbing themes in some points of the game as well. You witness possession, blindness through obsession, self-sacrifice, and other tragedies. Not everything is shown because of the way the game is framed through portraits and dialogue boxes, but that actually might make some of the lack of context even stronger because of it. There's a certain wife of a character that isn't shown on screen, but given the context of the scenario, it is very gruesome and just depressing. That choice in narrative is a bit of a double-edged sword. Compared to the previous title, this game does not have any full art for pivotal moments, which, on the other hand, does take away some of the cinematic appeal. They didn't appear extremely often in the Blazing Blade, but it gave you a unique look at characters which I feel this game could have benefited from, at least in some major scenes. The stakes of the plot are further complicated by the fact that the son of the Emperor of Grado, Leon, is childhood friends with both Ephraim and Erica. In retrospect, I feel the plot is fairly decent, even though the Sacred Stones are pretty much more like the Sacred MacGuffins. At the very least, this story leans further away from the typical legend that encompasses dragons and the like. Instead, the focus is more on monsters and demons that are being unleashed into the world. You fight zombies, bony boys, eyeballs, and oh my god. I had to look away from the screen as a kid because when I fought these spiders, no thanks. Yeah, same nameless young child, same. Even if they are just pixels, there's something about their looks, their movements, and sound effects that it just makes my skin crawl. They're definitely not as bad now, but yeah, let me fight literally any other monster in this game. These are the exact monsters that this trio of comedians are sworn to purge from this land. La Rochelle and her band like to pop up and then just leave randomly with seemingly no plot relevance at first. She is our favorite holy woman who is the main character of her own story, one of many best girls in this game. Like Marissa. These two are absolutely opposite ends of the social butterfly spectrum, but man, something about pink hair and the black outfit combo. It is all in the aesthetics, the beautiful pixel art from the portraits to the critical hits. I always felt as though this game hides between the shadows of the Blazing Blade and Path of Radiance, and isn't as celebrated. If you haven't tried Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones and are a fan of the series, I definitely recommend it. It holds up fairly well, and it's very interesting to observe the origins of series staples that are now present in games like Three Houses and Engage. Not even joking, some of my favorite map themes are from the later half of Sacred Stones and are totally worth the listen. Replaying this back then on the 3DS helped me to reevaluate my opinion of the game, and it's remained high on my list to this day. With that renewed perspective, I give Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones for the Game Boy Advance an 8.5 out of 10. While it may still have some flaws and dated aspects, the overall experience is something that those who have completed even more modern titles can find enjoyment in. I hope that people who may have tried the game and dropped it once, or never had a chance to experience it at all, can now give it a fair shot, so that you too can become a fellow Sacred Stoner. Thank you so much for watching. I wanted to do a shorter, more looser sort of review for this game. I tend to ramble about games for a long time, but maybe more NSO reviews like this can be quicker and to the point. Kind of like the text speed in the GBA Fire Emblem games. Look, do yourself a favor and remember to set the text speed to fast under options. It's just so slow by default. My goodness, look at this! They're gonna announce the Genealogy remake before they finish this conversation. If you like what you saw here and want to see more, you can support us on Patreon, follow us on Bluesky, and watch us on Twitch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go get ready for EmblemCon. It's an online convention held over Twitch and Discord. I do the graphics and host some of the streams, panels, and voice actor Q&As around this time every year. And it's going to be our 6th year doing it. This year it's held from May 1st to the 4th, so I better get on that. Take care, everyone. Till we meet again.